I'm gonna tell y'all something straight up. I've spent a big part of my life out in the Florida Everglades, and I've seen things most people would never believe unless they saw them with their own eyes. I've watched alligators ambush prey in knee-deep water. I've come face to face with wild hogs mean enough to charge a man without thinking twice. I've tracked panthers through brush so thick you can barely see your own hands in front of you. But what happened that morning? That was different. That wasn't just another day in the wild. That was the kind of moment that gets burned into your memory and stays there. It was just before sunrise, and the Everglades had that look it gets in the early morning. Blue, gray, fog floating over dark water. Cypress trees standing silent like ghosts, and that heavy swamp air that smells like wet earth, moss, and old water. Everything felt slow, quiet, peaceful almost. I was moving along a fresh trail, checking signs the way I always do. Bent grass, soft mud, fresh tracks. To me, that land talks, and after so many years out there, I know how to listen. That morning, I was following deer sign, nothing unusual, just reading the trail and enjoying the stillness. Then I saw her, a young, white-tailed deer in a little opening up ahead, grazing like she didn't have a care in the world. She was small, probably not even fully grown yet, with those big dark eyes and that light, delicate frame. Real graceful, real innocent, and I remember smiling, because no matter how harsh the wild can be, moments like that remind you why it matters, why it's worth protecting, why it still feels sacred. But then something caught my eye, just a little movement out near the waterline, a ripple. Now, if you don't spend time in swamps, that might not sound like much, but out there, little things matter. There was no wind, no fish jumping, no bird landing. That patch of water should have been still, but it wasn't. And the second I saw it, my stomach dropped. I didn't know exactly what was there yet, but I knew something was wrong. That kind of feeling? It ain't logic, it ain't thought, it's instinct. The kind your body learns after years of being in dangerous places. Every nerve in me lit up at once. Something was watching that deer, something big. She hadn't noticed yet. She just kept grazing, calm as ever, while that dark water near the reeds shifted in a way that made my skin crawl. Then her ears twitched, her head came up, her body stiffened, she felt it. But by then, it was too late. The water exploded, and I mean exploded. Mud, reeds, spray, everything burst apart in one violent second, and out of that swamp came a giant Burmese python. That thing launched like a living weapon, thick, fast, powerful, and so big that for a split second it didn't even feel real. The deer tried to jump away, she really did, but that snake was too fast. It hit her mid-movement and wrapped around her in one brutal, fluid motion. No hesitation, no wasted energy, just pure predatory force. In seconds, those coils were locked around her body. Then it started squeezing. I can still hear the sound she made, that panicked cry. Man, that sounded something to me. Her legs kicked wild and desperate, while the python tightened around her chest, tighter and tighter, every squeeze pressing the air out of her lungs. You could see the power in that snake's body, those muscles shifting under the scales like thick cables, each contraction measured and deadly. And for 1 second, I froze, because part of me knew exactly what I was looking at. Predator and prey. That's the wild. That's how it works. Things kill to survive. It's not pretty, but it's real. But this didn't feel like that. This didn't feel like the natural order. That snake didn't belong there. See, Burmese pythons are invasive in the Everglades. They were never meant to be part of that ecosystem. But now, they're out there in numbers, and they've done real damage. They wipe out native animals, upset the balance, and leave stretches of the swamp quieter than they should ever be. So no, what I was looking at wasn't just nature taking its course. It was an invader, crushing something that belonged there. Then I saw the deer's eye, wide open, terrified, looking right at me. And I swear to you, in that moment, the choice was made. I couldn't just stand there. Now the problem was, I wasn't exactly equipped for a fight with a giant python. I had no rifle, no machete, no backup, just the gear on my belt, a small pack on my back, and a little multi-tool that suddenly felt about as useful as a house key. Every sensible thought in my head was yelling at me to back off, to stay alive, to let it be, but that deer was still breathing, barely, and I knew that if I wasted even a few more seconds, she'd be gone. So I moved. I crashed through the brush, yelling, trying to make as much noise as I could. Sometimes a predator breaks focus when something bigger or louder comes at it. That was the hope anyway. Didn't work. That python stayed locked in, so I grabbed the thickest branch I could find and charged straight at it. I swung that thing with every ounce of force I had. The branch cracked across the snake's back and shattered, just snapped apart. That's how powerful that animal was. Hitting it felt like smashing wood against packed muscle and wet steel. The python barely reacted. Then it lifted its head, slow, and looked at me. I'll be honest, that look sent ice through me. There was nothing human in it, nothing emotional, just cold, reptilian calculation. It still had the deer wrapped up, but now I had its attention too, and that made everything worse. Still, I knew I needed some kind of opening, so I bent down, grabbed a rock from the mud, and threw it as hard as I could at the snake's head. It clipped near the jaw, and the python flinched for just a second. That was enough. I lunged in and grabbed one of the coils with both hands, trying to pull it loose from the deer, and good lord, I have never felt strength like that. It was like trying to pry apart a machine. The scales were slick with swamp water, and under them was nothing but rolling muscle. My hand slipped. My boots sank into the mud. My back and shoulders screamed. I pulled as hard as I could, but that snake was stronger than I was by a mile. Then it hit me. Part of its body whipped around and slammed into my legs so hard it knocked me straight into the swamp. 1 second I was pulling. The next I was flat in mud and water, gasping, disoriented, and fighting panic. Because now the snake wasn't just focused on the deer anymore. It was aware of me. I scrambled backwards, soaked and half covered in muck, and reached for the one thing I had left, my multi-tool. And yeah, I knew how ridiculous that looked. Me in the middle of the Everglades, facing down a giant constrictor with a tiny folding tool in my hand. But then I remembered the rope in my pack. It wasn't much, just a short length I kept for general field use, but right then it felt like my only chance. I figured if I could control the head, even for a moment, maybe I could force the snake to loosen its hold. So I moved in again, too close enough that one mistake would have put me right in those coils. The python's head came at me fast, and I barely twisted away in time. Mud splashed, my boots slid, and I threw that rope loop with both hands. By some miracle, it dropped over the snake's head. I yanked hard and pulled it tight just behind the jaws, and man, that's when the whole swamp erupted. The python went absolutely berserk. It thrashed so hard it sent water and mud flying everywhere. Its body slammed the ground and churned up the reed. The rope burned through my hands while I fought just to hold on. It dragged me sideways through the muck like I weighed nothing, but I kept pulling because then I saw something. The coils around the deer were loosening. Not much, just enough. Enough for one chance. I saw a narrow opening near the deer's chest, and I knew I had to take it. I let go with one hand, grabbed my multi-tool, and jammed it into that tight little gap between the snake's coils. Then I twisted as hard as I could. The python's whole body spasmed. For one awful second, I thought I'd made it worse. I thought the coils were about to crush down even harder. Then suddenly, they loosened. First a little, then more, and then the pressure broke. The deer's chest moved in the faintest little breath, and the python started to unwind. Its focus shifted back toward me, but the hold was broken now. The kill was gone. I stumbled backward, still keeping tension on the rope, trying not to get pulled in again. The snake paused, hissed low, and then, like it finally decided the fight wasn't worth it, it turned and slipped back into the dark water. Just like that, it was gone, like a ghost disappearing into the swamp. I dropped the rope and went straight to the deer. She was lying there motionless, covered in mud, those deep marks pressed into her body where the coils had been. For a second, I honestly thought I was too late. I put my hand near her chest. Nothing. Then a flutter, the faintest breath, and I just whispered, come on, sweetheart." I stayed with her. I brought some clean water over in my hand, kept my voice low, soft, steady. After a while, her eyes opened, then her head moved, then her legs. Slowly, real slowly, she got herself underneath her own weight and stood up, shaky, weak, barely steady, but alive. And man, I can't even tell you the relief that hit me. She stood there for a moment, swaying in the morning light, looking like she'd just come back from the edge of death. Then she looked at me one last time and turned toward the trees. Step by step, she disappeared back into the wild, and I just sat there in the mud, breathing hard, hands burning, body aching, watching her go. Some folks will say I should have let nature do what nature does. Maybe in another situation, that argument would make sense, but not this one. Because that wasn't balance. That wasn't the circle of life. That was an invasive predator taking another piece of a place it never belonged in. So yeah, I stepped in. It was dangerous, stupid maybe. Definitely not something I'd tell anybody else to try. But would I do it again? Yeah, I would. Because sometimes courage ain't about not being afraid. Sometimes it's about being scared to death and moving anyway. And that day, sitting there in the Everglades covered in mud and adrenaline, all I could think was this: that little deer belonged in that swamp. That snake didn't.